Hello and welcome everyone to this chess game review in which we feature an amazing chess move. Some of you may be familiar with this game because it's pretty famous. The move is considered to be one of the greatest chess moves of all time. So I don't know, we'll see what you think. You can leave comments and voice your opinion on what you think about that. So this game took place in 1912 between Frank Marshall, who was a U.S. champion for quite a few years in the early 1900s, and he played against looks like Levitsky. Let's begin this game. If I look at the review, it looks like Marshall played at a 94.3% accuracy versus 82.9% for his opponent. They both had one great move, but the amazing chess move I'm talking about was awarded a brilliant move here. So, as far as the rest of the game, Marshall had 3 inaccuracies, and that was it. His opponent had 4 inaccuracies, 1 mistake, and 1 blunder. So, let's check this out here and see what you think. All right, so with the analysis on, Marshall had the black pieces, and his opponent begins with d4. So Marshall was known as an attacking player. So his opponent plays d4, maybe to keep the game a little more strategic and less tactical. So e6 is the response. So this is called, according to the computer database here, the Queen's Pawn Opening Harwitz Defense. But we'll see that it'll transpose. So the opponent plays e4, grabbing the center with both of these pawns, and now we have the French defense here. So normally it begins with e4, e6, and then d4, d5. So we've transposed into a French defense, and the game continues with knight to c3, which protects this e4 pawn that's under attack. And now we have the Marshall variation of the French defense. So the person who it's named after, Frank Marshall, is playing this Marshall variation. So let's see how he does here. So the opponent just develops the other knight, and it looks like best, according to the computer, is to start breaking apart these pawns to just capture here with e takes d5. And then also the computer says that bishop to b5 is not bad either. So after knight to f3, white is still in the lead here, but Marshall continues with knight to c6. So this is a common theme in the French defense, where you have these pawns aiming down towards the queen side, and the c pawn is pushed forward, and then the knight jumps in behind it to put extra pressure on this d4 pawn. And so a possibility, the queen at some point could even jump in here and add even more pressure to this pawn. So the game continues with the capture finally. And now the computer says, that is the best move here. So e takes d5, then we have a recapture, and now the game continues with bishop to e2. And it looks like this is a mistake that swings the game to, just slightly in black's favor here. And better would have been to develop this bishop up here and pin the knight. So it looks like after this move, the game continues with just another developing move, but the game is about even. The computer actually likes this pawn push here, which I guess gains more space. It blocks in the bishop and takes away the possibility of capturing that pawn at some point. So, continuing on, we have a castling move by Marshall's opponent, and then just continuing development with the bishop being brought out, and Marshall's ready to castle himself. And then we have bishop to g5, another developing move, although once again the computer wants this pawn capture. And now we have castling by Marshall. And finally, that pawn is captured. So something else this does is it leaves Marshall with this isolated queen pawn here. So the strategy behind this is when there's an isolated queen pawn, or most isolated pawns that don't have any pawns beside them to protect them, well, a strategy is to go ahead and trade off pieces. So if all the pieces are traded off, or the more pieces that get traded off, the harder it's going to be to defend this pawn. So the person with the isolated pawn wants to kind of avoid trading off the pieces and use the open lines like this half open C file and this open E file. Use those in an attack possibly. Maybe put a rook on the open E file, a rook on the C file, and then a queen, creating a battery, something like to that effect. Whereas white would like to just trade off pieces and slowly get rid of the defenders of this pawn. And another thing to try and do is blockade this pawn. So first you would want to maybe jump a knight in here and stop this pawn from being able to push forward and attack and then maybe trade itself off where black could get rid of that weakness. So bishop to e6 helping defend the pawn. The knight jumps in here to blockade the pawn, but the computer says that's an inaccuracy, and it likes this knight to the rim move, which usually that's not a good thing to do, but that's what the computer says to do, is jump up here, defend this pawn with the knight to a4. So because the pawn wasn't defended, Marshall swoops in with his bishop, capturing the pawn, attacking this blockader. So now we have the knight and the bishop piling up on this knight, and it's only defended by the queen. So capture here. The knight captures, knocking out Marshall's bishop pair, but Marshall will recapture with this pawn, and now he doesn't have the isolated pawn anymore, and he has two central pawns that could be strong going into the end game. So now we have bishop to g4 here, attacking this unprotected pawn. And it looks like that's an inaccuracy. The computer prefers king to h1, just moving to the side and getting off of the line of this bishop here. So now we have the queen moving up to defend the pawn, and a retreat of this bishop, which was under attack by the knight. So white, is trying to keep his bishop pair, and now we have the rook moving in to help defend this backwards e6 pawn. And the queen moves up here, which allows the rooks to connect and give them more mobility, especially allow this rook on a1, which is not doing much at all over here, to be able to move over towards the center. And what else? Also, the queen is backing up the bishop. Maybe for a possible, if h6 is played, I guess the bishop could capture, and if there's a recapture, the queen could capture and kind of be up here around the king. Although, I don't know, you would have to calculate that out. I don't know if you would want to give up your bishop for these two pawns. It depends if you had a good follow-up if you could bring some other pieces up to help attack other than just your queen up there. All right, but anyway, getting back to the game, we had bishop to b4. So pinning this knight to the queen, and there could be a threat of pushing this pawn forward, although, well, we'll see what happens here. So because of this threat, the bishop pair here is, relinquished. They give up this bishop for that knight because it will allow, if this pawn pushes forward and attacks the pinned knight, it will allow the knight to jump to here. So if black captures white's queen, when the knight jumps up to e4, they could recapture black's queen and keep material even. So recapture with the rook. So that move kind of helped improve black's position. It pulled this rook up here. It got rid of the bishop pair that white had. It brings the rook forward, and the other rook can swing in behind him and help create a battery up this half-open f-file here. So now white brings out this other rook, which wasn't doing anything here. Kind of lines up on the queen here. And the game continues with the queen remaneuvering over to here, getting out of the line of this battery and lining up on the king. So we have queen to e2, getting out of the pin, but this allows a capture, and black gains another pawn. Although, if we go back, the computer, it says that just capturing that pawn now is not the best move. So these pawns are weak now because they're broken apart, and they'll remain that way, into the end game. So there's probably no hurry to go ahead and capture this c3 pawn. The computer likes, rook to e7 better. And that's probably because right now this rook is unprotected. So once the queen jumps down here, this rook can capture the d pawn, and this pawn here is pinned to that rook and cannot recapture, or the queen would capture the rook up here. So that's probably why the computer didn't like that move, because it allows this, which the computer says is a great move. You capture, and that rook cannot be captured. Well, I guess it could be, but if that rook is captured, well, then the queen would capture the e8 rook with check. And so, then I guess you could have a block here with this rook on f6. So in the game, we had knight jumping up here to d4 and attacking the queen, which is best in this position. And so the pressure is building, I guess, on white with this queen on his side of the board. The knight jumps up here attacking, and it produces a blunder with this queen to h5 move. And now black is ahead by almost 3 pawns, or the equivalent of 3 pawns of material. So let's take a look here. We're getting close to the amazing chess move, which is towards the end of the game. So, well, the end of the game, which is coming up shortly. So after this blunder, well, let's take a quick look at what should have been played. Excuse me, I went too far. Where's that blunder move? Okay, so we had this capture here. The knight jumps in attacking the queen, and the blunder, queen to h5, was played. So the computer recommends instead queen to e4, which would have kept the game even, because now you have this threat on the knight with the rook and the queen. So we could have this move being played, rook to f4, and then it recommends the queen jump up here to e5. So this is what the computer recommends. Queen to e5, h6, and then f3, something like this. So let's go back here and see why the queen cannot capture this. Well, the queen can't capture this rook on f4 because then it looks like it would lead to this fork. So let's check it out. If we had that, we would have knight to e2 with the fork. The king would have to move to h1. And then we would have this capture. And now the queen is off the board. This rook is under attack as well. So, you know, that right there shows you why that couldn't be captured back here in this position. Okay, back to the game. After rook captures up here, the knight jumps in attacking the queen. The queen retreats, which is a blunder. And so how is that blunder taken advantage of? Well, let's take a look here. Well, this rook is under attack by the queen, so we see why he moved up there to just put pressure on the queen, or excuse me, the queen moved up here to threaten this rook, put pressure on that rook, force something to be done about it. And it looks like just moving to f8 and doubling up here is best. If you're thinking about g6 attacking the queen, take a look at that, see why that wouldn't move, or why that move wouldn't work. Looks like then just queen to e5, the game would be even. So going back, we have rook moving here, a great move, doubling up, creating a battery here on the half open f file. So we're getting close to this amazing chess move, and then you can see what you think about it. So now this rook was under attack, so it moves here to e5. Computer says that's an inaccuracy, that capturing the knight would have been better, but then white would just be down even more material. Let's take a look here. Or I shouldn't say more material, because right now they're even. But if you just capture that knight, it would relieve the attack, or kind of lessen attacking possibilities for black. But then you would just be behind in material. So we see why the rook was not given up for this knight. And also white just doesn't see what is about to happen, I guess. So an attack on the queen. The queen moves out of the way, and then, and also it looks like the best move would have been to retreat down here to d1. We have a capture here, a brilliant move with this right here, and let's see. Oh, it's funny. I thought that the brilliancy was awarded to the amazing chess move. But it appears that it is not. It was awarded to this move. So let's take a look and see why this move is brilliant, which I guess this is the beginning of this sequence of moves that leads to the great, the amazing chess move. So we have a capture here. Let me see where I'm at here. Rook captures. And then c5 is played, attacking the queen. So in this position, black is ahead by this knight, but the rook's under attack and the queen is under attack. So now we have this, the amazing chess move. Queen to g3 is played. So I don't know. You can see or leave comments or whatever you think about this move, if you think it's very great or not. But if we look at this, the queen is under attack by two different pawns and the other queen. So there is a threat right now of capturing here on h1, or excuse me, h2 with a checkmate. So the computer says, well, before I go in, this is where the opponent resigned. So after this move, white resigned. But before I go into what the computer says could have played out, how the game could have continued, I want to go back a little bit and look at what would have happened if this would have been captured here. So if we would have a capture there, well then you have this. So knight to f3 and a fork of the queen and the king. So the best move would be to come forward and then, oh, interestingly enough, it says that capturing the rook is even better there. Instead of capturing, okay, it says that it's better to just go ahead and capture the rook here. But, you know, your choice. You could capture the queen or the rook and be ahead in both positions. So you would have your choice. And that is why you can't capture that rook back in this position. And it looks like right now rook to e4 would have been the best move. But this was played. Attacking the queen, and now it leaves the possibility of the knight jumping here to e2 with check. So the amazing chess move, the queen is just placed on this square where it can be captured three different ways. So the computer says the game may continue with the queen capturing, then a check, forking the queen and the king. King moves, we have a check, and this knight can't be captured because the rook is pinning the h-pawn. And if this f-pawn captures, well then this rook would just capture the rook on f1 with a back rank checkmate. So the king would be forced to move here. And then black could just pick off this rook right now and just, you know, after the king recaptures, you would have two rooks versus one with an equal number of pawns. And the computer recommends this. Knight to e2 here. The king would move, and then trying to trade off after capture. You're just a knight ahead. So that's what the computer recommends. You know, so I guess it would be your choice on how you would want to continue there. And if we go back, we could take a look at some of the other possibilities. So we saw why the queen doesn't really work. Well, if the pawn captures here, well, now what do we have? A mate in one with knight to e2, checking, and the rook is covering here. So that doesn't work. So what about this pawn? If we do this, well then we have knight to e2, check, and the rook is covering this f-file, so the king would move, and then you have mate here. So, interesting, you know, crazy endgame. If you like tactics and fighting chess, you know, interesting games like that, you may want to check out more of Frank Marshall's chess games from the first half of the 1900s. So, his games are from about 100 years ago, and they're usually full of a lot of interesting tactics and attacking possibilities. So, be sure to check out the games of the former U.S. champion, Frank Marshall. All right, well, if you enjoyed this game review of this game by Frank Marshall, this amazing chess move, and you can leave your comments and let me know what you think. If you think it's as amazing as other people have said it is. And it's funny, the computer did not even give that queen to g3 move. It didn't even say it was a great move. It said it's the best move in the position, but it actually liked the move before that, leading up to it. This rook capturing on h3 move, it actually liked that and said that that was the brilliant move. So anyway, if you have not liked or subscribed, please do that to support the channel. Feel free to leave comments, suggestions at any time. Also, any requests, if there's something you would really like to see, any chess topics, then I'll try and do a video on those. Thank you everybody for watching, and have a super chess day.